Tuesday the 11th of August, and we're out just setting up the combine here in our tricky field of oats. Let's see how it goes. So this will need a few days before we can bale it, and as you can see, it's stuff like this that's got the green straw, and that's where the problem's coming. The heads are really fit, so that's not an issue. So as we discussed, this is the real issue with spring oat straw, is that the grain is fit but the straw definitely isn't, and it needs to be left for a few days to dry out. And what we've done is we've turned the wind right down to try and reduce our losses. Okay, so we've done a tray sample here. The first one had quite a lot of grain, so we turned the wind down, but not all of these are solid. That one is, that one is, that one is, the rest were empty. So we're in the oats. That danger that we were talking about with the blind sites. I'm here with my father, and we've decided to capture as much in the tank as possible. If we have to clean it out later, so be it. But we're as worried about volunteers, so that's the seeds not captured by the combine falling on the ground and then growing and frustrating the next crop. So with a view to the future, this is our next field of winter barley going for the Chiltern Brewery. So we want to try and minimize contamination. So we want to capture as much oat seeds in the tank and as few left behind as possible. So compromised, push the wind down, try to capture as many in the tank as possible. But really, this will be the last day's combining for this combine, and then it will be sent back. And then we've just got two little fields left. Probably start those tomorrow. One of spring wheat and one of spring beans. But they're kind of specialist fields, not part of the wider arable rotation. So, lovely weather continues. So do the shocking yields. So hopefully at the end of this video I'll be able to provide you a summary of all of our yields for this year and explain what that means for us. See you later, bye. Morning everybody, Saturday the 15th of August. We've been planting cover crops, so we've managed to apply a multi-species cover crop onto some SFI land and roll that in. Today I'm out in a field of Oilseed rape stubble, and I just wanted to show you a quick observation. So just walking through this this Oilseed rape plant was established with the Claydon, and as we walk along there are lots of really impressive root structures on the surface. So we're really, like everybody else, really worried about fire risk. So we've been hit through this field with the Terra Star. That's created this sort of bit of tilth on the top with lumps, sort of half fist sized lumps like this. Another one over here. Obviously they are as hard as anything with the drought conditions. And then we've been through with a stubble rake. The aim is to try and destroy the habitat for slugs and expose slug eggs to the weather, with a hope that it dries them out and that gives us slug control. But it is coming back to the drought conditions. We're still so worried about fire risk that we haven't been through this that often. Normally we use a stubble rake probably 3 or 4 passes in Oilseed rape like this to try and control volunteers, but it's so dry that the volunteers aren't even growing. So that's kind of reduced our motivation for multiple passes. but we're still left with the slug control issue, and really the breaking down of those stalks. If we have a look at these stalks, they're still pretty big, and they're quite significant. I mean, still the sort of size of my finger, and they are rock solid. They're very woody, very lignified, and this is the sort of effect we would expect where the stubble rake splits them in half. Regenerative circles, they probably refer to this as a brittle climate where stuff is not rotting. I mean, look at the base of that. It's a big structure for a plant, for an annual plant. So it's a brittle environment, i.e. there's no moisture, so stuff doesn't rot. It slowly breaks down. It decarbonizes, I think they call it. Whereas normally in our maritime climate, stuff rots down. So it's a very different, unusual environment for us, not our usual weather pattern at all. So I'm just out here trying to contemplate how we get it into a situation that we would want to drill into. We would be, so it's as I said, 15th of August now. We'd be looking to drill probably this first week of October. So we've probably got 6 weeks before we need to be actioning this. So we've got a situation where two headlands come together right here, and on the ground you can see they've had 2 or 3 passes, and this here is really some quite nice stuff. It's probably 1.5 to 2 inches thick. I mean, that's pretty small and friable. Certainly you could plant a seed into that. That would be ideal, really. And how have we got there? Probably 2 or 3 passes with a stubble rake. So comes back to the strategy. Probably come back through with the stubble rake a few more times. Don't try and go too fast. The top end of the field, there's quite a lot of flint, but there's not a lot of residue here to catch fire. So hope is that we can make a seed bed after the rake quite easily, despite the dry conditions. Afternoon everybody. Well, this is it, the last field of combining for harvest 26. Safe to say it's another sunny day, but we're out in a bit of a disappointing field. This is a field of spring beans, and the reason we wanted to plant it is it historically has been a grass field, but we have a large arable block next door, so we're trying to incorporate it. We drilled it with the Claydon drill directly into the swath, and the beans are here simply to break it down before we go back into, well, it would normally be wheat, but actually the field next door has already been planted into oilseed rape, so we're actually going to go straight into oilseed rape with this field. So rather unusually, beans into rape in order that it coordinates with the rest of the block. Wasn't the plan, but that's how all things have turned out. So the end of harvest, as you can see, lots of thistles here. It was a problematic crop, even in the drought, or as a result of the drought, germination wasn't very good, and so it's always been quite open canopy, and therefore the weeds have got established. So the end for harvest 26, challenging year. See you soon. Bye. Good morning everybody. Sunday the 16th of August, out here in a field of winter wheat. Yes, winter wheat. So just by means of explanation, because we're in an SFI scheme here, this is going into a multi-species cover crop for this winter, and then it will go into spring oats, I think, next year. Now the issue we are having here is obviously that it's really dry. The issue we have here is that when I started regenerative farming and people were talking about cover crops, we went for the cheapest cover crop we could. And that's where we developed mustard, or an alternative, if we were going for a cereal, we used to do oats. And we can either blow on the mustard or spin on the oats. Those were our two cheapest options. Now, as it happens, SFI came along and they stipulated multi-species cover crop. The issue is that the seed costs are a lot higher, and that establishing them is quite expensive if you drill it. So you end up using a lot of your SFI payment just to establish the crop. Now, we are on an obligation under SFI to buy a multi-species seeds, so we have bought a summer mix, but to keep our costs down, we have just blown it through our Technique broadcaster and we've rolled it in. So this field has been baled, so we're getting good seed soil contact, and we've just been through and rolled it this week, hence why it looks a bit sort of more whiter than yellow, which happens as the straw is rolled down after rolling. So we will follow this through the winter and see if there's a difference between multi-species and like our standard single species mustard crop. Finally, in one of my discussion groups on WhatsApp, we were debating whether to drill oilseed rape or not. A lot of the farmers in the group, slightly further down south than me, sort of around the sort of A34 corridor, a lot of those farmers had held off drilling oilseed rape, waiting for rain, or getting closer to the end of August. They'd given themselves sort of another 2 weeks, and the thinking there is that the later we get in the season, the closer you are to rainfall one way or the other, and that they still needed warm soils in order to establish their crops. So they were giving themselves 10 days, 2 weeks, and then they would not apply any oilseed rape. And interestingly, they were beginning to get concerned about cabbage stem flea beetle flights because they'd seen numbers being picked up in the traps. Now, we've taken an alternative strategy. Because we've planted with a multi-species cover crop, we think something's going to grow, and therefore we have planted all of our oilseed rape, and time will tell which strategy is right. Last year we planted it, some plants grew but most of them didn't strike, and then we've actually had a pretty good harvest of the oilseed rape. We averaged just under 4 tons a hectare. So I'm quite happy to plant it and then see what happens if it rains or if it doesn't. All right, see you soon. More updates to follow. Bye.